Reform are telling us they're going to tackle immigration, but can we believe them? I think the best way to predict the future is to look at relevant past behaviour. What does the track record look like? Have they earned our trust? Or have they absolutely lied time and time again? Well, let's take a look. In 2010, a rather fat-faced David Cameron pledged to reduce net immigration to tens of thousands of people. With the benefit of ONS data, we can see whether or not this was true. And as you can see from the graphic on screen, we imported about 500,000 people a year, not the tens of thousands that were promised. So this was a lie. Tory MPs turned Reform candidates, Nadhim Zahawi, Jake Berry, Nadine Dorries, were all elected on this promise. They did not deliver it, so should we trust them again? In 2015, it was Groundhog Day. Cameron again pledged to reduce net migration to tens of thousands. And again, looking at ONS data, we can see net migration was around 280,000 a year. Again, way more than the promise that was made. In fact, it was much worse than that. Immigration was around 600,000 people a year, but the figure was offset by a large number of people beginning to see the writing on the wall and leaving. Suella Braverman, Andrea Jenkins, Maria Caulfield and Anne-Marie Morris were all elected in 2015. They were elected on the promise to reduce immigration to a few tens of thousands every year, and they did not deliver it. Should we trust them again? In 2017, David Cameron has been replaced by the charisma vacuum that was Theresa May. In this election, Tessie promised to reduce immigration to a few tens of thousands a year. Seems like we've heard that before somewhere. Well, it probably won't come as a huge shock to see that net migration was somewhere between 210 and 240,000 a year, with a level of overall immigration around 600,000 every year. You may be beginning to detect a pattern by now. Ben Bradley and Ross Thompson were elected in 2017, again as Conservative MPs. They did not deliver on the Manifesto promise, so should we trust them again? In 2019, Bunter had a crack, coming out with the same line for the fourth time stretched credibility even for the Conservatives. So this time they were going to introduce an Australian-style point system. Immigrants, you see, were required to have skills, job offers and English proficiency. And how did that work out? Well, the so-called Boris wave for year ending March 2023 saw immigration at 1.47 million people with a record net migration of 944,000. Notable Reform MPs Lee Anderson and Robert Jenrick were again elected in 2019. Did they deliver what they were promised? And if not, can we trust them to do so again? Jenrick's made a bit of a name for himself on social media recently. I suspect at the time he was after Kemi's job, but on discovering his various activities, she fired him and so he joined Reform. In 2021, Robbie told us that welcoming Afghan refugees was a national project. Too bad he couldn't screen out the ones who regarded consent as something of an optional extra during what you might call intimate encounters. Here's Robbie welcoming a nice, friendly Afghan family, husband, wife and 3 smiling children. But is that what typical asylum seekers look like? We've seen photo after photo of fighting-age men coming to the country, but let's look at the data. As you can see, in 2024, fully 71% of those seeking asylum were male. This was a slight decrease from the peak of 80% in 2021. So lovely photo op and all that, but not one which reflected the reality on the ground. And even though he didn't bother with the tedious business of actually getting elected, Rishi Sunak, this Roland Rat tribute act, pathetically stood behind the lectern saying, "Stop the boats." No boats were stopped, and pretty much all the above-mentioned MPs stood behind Roland for this pointless non-event. So, with a track record like this, can we trust Reform to do anything other than talk about immigration? Most of the Tory MPs who jumped ship simply did so because they think there's more chance of being re-elected on a Reform ticket. That's it. There's been no road to Damascus moment. Only this week, Farage has welcomed an Indian immigrant to Reform who set up some kind of BAME football team, and he's a DEI champion. In the same week, however, he suspended Falklands War hero Rear Admiral Chris Parry from Reform for saying something about Jewish ambulances or something. So ask yourself honestly, who's going to represent British interests better? A Falklands War hero who was born in this country, or some guy who came over from India 6 years ago who was reportedly talking to the Greens as well as Farage? Come on now, that's not a difficult question. Look, I get it. You desperately want change, and so do I. At last, the two-party system seems to be crumbling and there's a chance. So it's important we take this chance. And I know you want Farage to be the real deal, but he's not. The 30 or so Tory MPs who failed to deliver immigration 4 times on the bounce cannot be trusted. This is not a mistake we can afford to make for the 5th time. Reform is fundamentally an empty shell. You're clinging on, desperately hoping for change, but Farage is not the man, and I think deep down you know that. There's only one man who can do it, and he's our last hope. And when we hit the tipping point, as we will, reform will collapse. So ask yourself this one simple question. Do you believe Rupert Lowe is telling the truth? I do. And the common sense measures he's proposing are the one chance we have to save ourselves before the ship goes down. Take that chance and let's build a better Britain.
If you like this, please like, recommend and subscribe.